3 True Night Horror Stories. I was never really alone. Story 1. The house that adjusted to me. I moved into the house in early winter. The kind of quiet move where nothing dramatic happens, and that almost makes it worse, because you expect silence to stay harmless when it introduces itself politely. The house was small, one-floor, narrow hallway bedrooms, tucked toward the back, and I liked it because everything was visible at once, which meant nothing could sneak up on me without being obvious, or at least that's what I told myself while unpacking boxes alone during the first snow of the season. The first week passed without incident, just normal house sounds, the heater clicking, pipes ticking, wood shifting as the temperature dropped at night, all things you tell yourself are normal because they usually are. But the first strange thing didn't feel dramatic enough to panic over, which is why I ignored it. And that was the way the lights seemed to lag behind me. Not turning on late, but turning on in a way that felt hesitant, like the house was waiting to see where I was going before committing. One night I walked from the living room toward the kitchen, and the kitchen light flicked on a second before I reached the doorway, even though I hadn't touched the switch yet. And I remember standing there with my hand frozen mid-air, telling myself it was coincidence or faulty wiring, even though the timing felt too intentional to dismiss completely. Over the next few nights, it happened again and again, lights turning on slightly ahead of me, always just one room ahead, never behind, like the house was anticipating my movement rather than reacting to it. And I started adjusting my behavior without realizing it, walking slower, changing direction suddenly, stopping mid-hallway just to see what would happen. Sometimes nothing happened. Other times a light in a room I wasn't even facing would turn on dimly, not fully bright, just enough to glow. And the dimness bothered me more than full light ever could, because it felt controlled, like someone had dialed it to exactly the level they wanted. One night around midnight, I decided to test it standing in the hallway and turning sharply toward the laundry room. Without warning, and the light there flicked on immediately. But this time, it didn't dim or brighten. It stayed fixed, like it had guessed correctly. That was the moment my chest tightened, because guessing means learning, and learning means attention. I told myself I was tired, stressed, reading too much into nothing. But from that night on, I slept with my bedroom door locked, even though I couldn't explain why to anyone without sounding ridiculous. The next escalation didn't come as a noise, but as a correction. And that's what still bothers me most, because noises can be random, but corrections feel deliberate. I had a habit of leaving the bathroom light on overnight, a small comfort thing I'd done since childhood. And one night, I turned it off before bed without thinking, crawled under the covers, and closed my eyes. Minutes later, I heard the soft click of a switch, and the bathroom light came back on, but not fully. Just enough to cast a thin line of light under my bedroom door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I lay there staring at the ceiling, telling myself I must have imagined the sound until I heard it again. The click of the switch being nudged, followed by silence, followed by the light dimming slightly, like someone adjusting it to what they considered correct. I stayed awake until sunrise. The next morning, the switch was in the on position. I never touched it. Over the next weeks, the house began to feel less like a place I lived in and more like a place that accommodated me. Not kindly, but efficiently, lights adjusting doors, settling shut behind me, thermostat changing by 1 degree in the middle of the night. Never enough to wake me fully, but enough to make me feel watched without being observed. The final night came when the power went out during a snowstorm, plunging the house into silence so complete that my own breathing felt intrusive. And I sat in the living room with a flashlight and my phone watching shadows crawl where walls met ceilings. That's when the light in the hallway turned on. Not electrically. Not with a flicker. It glowed softly, warmly, like power had never left it. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, whispering no without realizing it, and the light brightened, responding, acknowledging me. I backed away, and it dimmed. I took one step forward, and it brightened again. That was when I understood the house wasn't malfunctioning. It was communicating. I grabbed my keys and coat and walked out into the snow without locking the door, because locking felt meaningless at that point. When I came back the next morning, the power was restored, the lights were off, and everything looked normal, but the feeling never left. I moved out 2 weeks later. Wherever I live now, I keep my lights exactly how I like them, because I don't want anything thinking it needs to help me again. Story 2. The highway that didn't want me to leave. I was driving home from a late shift when it happened. Nothing unusual about the night at first. Just empty roads and the low hum of tires against asphalt. The kind of drive where your thoughts wander and you barely register the scenery because you've driven it so many times it's carved into your muscle memory. The highway cut through a stretch of forest with no exits for miles, no gas stations, no houses, just trees pressing close on both sides like they were leaning in to listen. And I remember checking the clock and thinking I'd be home in 20 minutes. That's when I noticed the headlights behind me. At first they were distant, harmless, just another car heading the same way. But as minutes passed, they stayed the same distance no matter how fast or slow I drove. Never gaining, never falling back, just present, steady, patient. I changed lanes. They changed lanes. I slowed down. They slowed. I sped up. They followed. No honking, no flashing, just there. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was coincidence, that plenty of people drive long stretches late at night, but the road began to feel wrong, repeating itself in subtle ways. I couldn't immediately explain. The same curve appearing twice, the same reflective sign passing my headlights again, even though I was certain I'd already driven past it. I checked my GPS. It showed forward movement, no rerouting, no errors. Just a calm blue line insisting everything was normal. That's when the radio turned on. I hadn't touched it. Static filled the car for a moment before a voice came through, calm, male, conversational, like someone sitting in the passenger seat. "You missed your turn," it said. My hands tightened on the wheel. I looked around the car, heart racing, whispering what, even though I already knew there was no one there. I slammed the radio off, but the voice continued, speaking through the silence, now softer, closer, telling me I could still fix it if I turned around. The headlights behind me brightened, flooding my mirrors with white light, and for the first time I noticed something impossible. There was no engine noise behind me. No tires, just light. I pulled onto the shoulder, breathing hard, telling myself I needed to stop, to think, to ground myself. And when I looked back at the road, the headlights were gone. The forest was silent, too silent. I sat there shaking for several minutes before starting the car again, driving slowly, afraid to go too fast, afraid to go too slow, until finally I saw familiar signs and a real exit, and the highway released me like it had lost interest. When I got home, I checked my dashcam footage, expecting to reassure myself with evidence. But the file from that stretch of road was corrupted, replaced with a single frame of darkness, labeled with a timestamp that didn't match my drive. The file name wasn't random. It read, "Stay. I don't drive that highway anymore, even in daylight, especially not in daylight, because something about that road learned how to keep me." Story 3. The room that answered back. The apartment was quiet enough to feel safe at first, which should have been a warning, because real quiet never stays that way. I lived alone, top floor, no shared walls on one side, and I liked it, because nothing ever happened there, until the night. The power went out, and the silence felt heavier than darkness ever could. I lit candles, sat on the couch, and scrolled my phone until the battery died, leaving me alone with the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of the building settling. Around midnight, I heard footsteps above me, slow, careful, not pacing, just standing, shifting weight. I told myself it was the building, even though I knew there was no apartment above mine. When I whispered hello, The footsteps stopped, and that's when my phone screen lit up despite being dead. A single notification appeared with no app name, no sender, just text that read, "You're in the wrong room." I stood up, heart pounding, and the hallway light turned on by itself, casting a warm glow toward my bedroom. I didn't move. The light brightened. I stepped back. It dimmed. I felt sick with recognition, because I'd felt this before, years earlier, in another house, and the realization that it had followed me hit harder than any sound ever could. I grabbed my keys and walked out into the cold night, leaving the door unlocked behind me, because I knew locking it wouldn't matter. When I came back in the morning, everything was dark and normal again, except for one thing. My bedroom mirror had fogged overnight, and written in the condensation were the words, "You listened." I moved out a month later. Wherever I live now, I never answer when something calls my name in an empty room.